wanted to show you how to make these little ears today. I did this little guy with a crochet kit, but there were no directions on how to do the ears. For this, you're going to need a ball of yarn, knitting needles to match because this is a knit tutorial, scissors, and a needle that will go over the yarn. We're going to cast on about 8 stitches. I'm going to take about a foot of yarn, 12 inches, and just leave that as our tail. We want to be able to use the end of it to sew in and things like that. So I'm going to make a slip knot by just wrapping around and then using my knitting needle to go in, scoop that over, and then pull it on there. That's what I like to do. Then I make sure that that tail is on the top. Grab it with my 3 fingers. My first finger goes on the tail that's on the top. My thumb goes on the tail that's on the bottom. And then I start, going under, grab that top tail, pull it under and off. Again, going under, top tail, under and off. Under, over to the top tail, under and off. I have 4 on there. Your first slip knot counts as 1, so I need 4 more. Make sure that you don't do this too tightly, and I did mine kind of tight, which isn't the greatest. Make sure you don't do yours too tightly so that you're able to knit into the first row well, and I don't like to count this as a first row because then I kind of get confused. So this is just your beginning, your starting area. It's kind of like if you make a foundation chain in your crochet projects, but this is knitting. So this tail will be used at the end. Don't use this tail anymore right now. And now you're going to use your working yarn and use your other part of your knitting needle to start knitting. To do the knit stitch, which we're only going to do knit stitches for this project, you go under, working yarn is in your right, the other hand that you're not using. If you're right or left-handed, it doesn't matter. But the knit stitch is always going to be under the yarn toward the back. The working yarn goes over the one in the back, and then you pull under and pull the loop off. Under to the back, over the back, under and off. Under to the back, over the back needle, under again the other way, and off. When you're knitting, your yarn is right by you. Mine is a little farther away. I'm going to make sure, and at the end of each row, you might want to count. I'm going to make sure I didn't make any mistakes and bring over any other loops that I wasn't supposed to. I have 8. This is my first row of knit stitches. I'm going to keep doing the knit stitch back and forth until I get 8 rows, and then I'll be back. When you're at 8, just check your work and see if you're happy with how your square is turning out. Mine isn't quite square enough yet for me. So I'm going to keep going, and when I'm done, I'll pop back on and tell you how many rows I ended up knitting. I like how it's looking now after I did 8 rows of stitches. Now I'm going to cast off. In order to cast off, you just start by taking 2 of the loops, going in back like a knit stitch, slipping them off onto the other needle, and then using the original needle that they were on, going under the one that's on the back. Make sure that you separate them to know which one's on the back, and make sure that your yarn didn't split like mine. And then make sure that the original needle grabs the back loop, and then the other needle grabs the one that was in the front, all of the fibers. Oh, I'm going to go off a second just to grab all the fibers. This is tricky yarn that I picked to use. All of the yarn wants to come off. Not always perfect. Kind of pulling that tight, and then you only need to now take one at a time off because you have a working loop on your yarn now. So you're going to take off, grab that loop that's in the back, try not to slip off this front loop, and use that to flip it. If you have stuff come off like me, just carefully take your needle off and poke it back through. And then keep working and cast off as you go. When I get to the end, I make sure to just keep that last loop on my yarn needle and having cut off the yarn that was connected to the ball of yarn, and put a needle on it. And then I make sure to start to weave in this, just back and forth. I don't whip stitch it or anything till I get to my loop, which doesn't take very long since we're working on such a little small thing. And then when I get to this corner, I can take the needle out and bring my yarn through the loop. Now we have our little square here. Now what we can do is start to form the ear. To form the ear, we're going to sew all the way around a circle. And to do that, we're basically going to start, I'm going to go under and not sew the corners, but make like it diagonally, and then sew straight pretty much. I know it's hard to see with white on white. I was going to do it with a different color yarn, but I wanted to just finish this. And then another corner is coming, so I'm not going to like go all the way down to the corner. I'm going to do diagonally again. Then also across, like everything's going well and normally sewed in. Getting to the final corner, and then I will skip the corner by going here and cutting it off there, and then going back up to my original diagonal place, because we're not going in the corner. And then we'll start to pull on the yarn I like to put my finger inside to just shape it easier. And as you pull, you can see how the little ball ear is forming. If you want to put stuffing in there, you can. I don't think I did for this small of an ear. And then I took my needle and I started to sew it together to make sure that you couldn't really notice those corners that are trying to still be there. Tuck the corners in. And just start kind of sewing them together across from each other and together. So that they'll tuck in and you won't notice them at all. And there's your little round ear.